Yeah, right. I'm so happy to welcome you all here today to the, I think it's the 5th or 6th annual CLF, Canadian Language Fairness Luncheon. We are very blessed to have you all here today. We've got a little delay because of our arrival of our guest speakers, but Howard Galganoff has arrived, so I will be starting off with him in a minute. Brian Lilly, as you all know, is here from Sun News signing his newest book, CBC Exposed. The media plays such an important part in what we all are aware of. And there's been an event in the past couple of weeks that really woke me up to how the media controls everything. Rogers TV had called me a couple of weeks ago and asked me to do an interview. To which I replied, yeah, but I'll get back to you, I just want to confirm. And then they left me a voicemail saying, can you get back to me as soon as possible because we need to confirm with the other panel members. And I'm there, oh, so this isn't an interview, this is a panel discussion. I wonder who the other panel members are. So I asked them, and they told me that one of the panel members would be a representative from the Conseil Scolaire District Catholic, whatever, French School Board, and also from the French School Board, and also a professor from a university. And they wanted me to recommend a person from a Francophone organization that could represent the Francophone organization. So I replied to them and said, well, why do you need all this academia? The topic is bilingualism in the capital. Why don't you have business owners? Why don't you have people, the victims of forced bilingualism? Why don't you have Howard Galganoff and Jean-Serge Brisson or Christopher Cameron and Debbie Cameron, 2 RNs that can't find work in their own hometown? Why don't you have anyone that's been affected by forced bilingualism? Why is it academia? To which she called me back and responded and said, oh, there's only one academia. So she ruled out the school boards. She said, the professor from Ottawa University. He's a linguistics expert. And I said, wait a minute, are you talking about Dr. Gratton? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh yeah, he was sitting on the other side in the courthouse, the side that wants to take away our freedom of speech. He's for the side that gets money from us, just like the French organizations, just like all these, the schools that promote French immersion, they get extra money from taxpayers to promote their agenda. So who's going to be on my side? You got all these people on the other side. Who's going to be on my side? And I made recommendations who she should include so that I could be part of this panel. And I said, if you don't include them, I'm not going to be set up. I'm not going to be a member of this panel. And to which she hung up. She said she didn't want me on her panel anymore, and she hung up on, and I hung up on her. The next day, she contacted me. Kim, our president, and said, hey, can you send me someone else? To which Kim responded, well, no. If you even at the panel, Beth, our official spokesperson, would be happy to be on your discussion, but you got to even at the panel. The next day we were down in South Glengarry where Howard was promoting, trying to pass a bylaw about freedom of speech, and Deputy Mayor of South Stormont, Tammy Hart, came up to me and she said, hey Beth, Brian, the mayor of South Stormont, and myself have both got emails in our inboxes from Rogers wanting us to go on TV the next day to do a panel discussion. They didn't go. I went to Rogers last night to just check and see who they did end up having on their panel discussion for that day. There's nothing. There's no podcast or anything for that day. So I don't think they ended up having the interview. If they did, it was very lopsided. But that's just the way the media holds us. Propaganda. It's propaganda, plain and simple. Everyone is led to believe that everyone's so friendly. Just like the latest Nick Nano's poll on language, where he says that everyone thinks that bilingualism is a good thing. Well, of course it's a good thing, but that's not the right question to ask. You should be asked if forced bilingualism is right and appropriate. And of course it's not. Steve Paikin at Agenda Camp last year told Kim and I, and whoever else was with us, that we were not allowed to use the word forced with bilingualism. And I said, well, we're not against bilingualism, we're against forced bilingualism, but he would not allow us to use that. And he's the guy on what is it, TVO or whatever, with the agenda, Steve Paikin. He wouldn't allow us to use the word forced bilingualism, so he's trying to make us look like we're bigots, which we're not. So, from there, we go to South Stormont. Unfortunately, Christopher Cameron, the nurse Christopher Cameron and his wife Debbie Cameron, also a nurse, registered nurses, could not be with us today as a flu bug has swept their whole family. But he has been protesting since February of 2012 because he is a specialist in dialysis nursing. He cannot get a job in his own hometown of Cornwall because at Cornwall Community Hospital they require 100% of nurses hired to be bilingual. He comes out to the Heart Institute in Ottawa to do his work. Debbie is looking at going down to the United States or out west to do her work. She specialized in cancer care. This is what's happening. South Stormont passed a bilingual sign bylaw earlier this year. Deputy Reeve Tammy Hart, who's a big supporter of the Canadians for Language Fairness and the Ontario Landowners Association, as well as Mayor Brian McGillis from South Stormont, have both spoken up, and they led the way for South Stormont Town Council to pass the first bylaw saying that they will never introduce anything that will go against freedom of speech, which means no bilingual sign bylaws or anything like that, which Russell Township, of course, passed, which restricts and limits the use on your sign to 2 languages, French and English. You're not allowed any other language on your signs than French and English. And even then, I've noticed in Embrun, in fact, I had our councillor Pierre Leroux, who's on our side as well, phoned me up a few weeks ago and said, Beth, hey, can you lay a complaint because the La Maison des Arts in Embrun has a freestanding sign which would require a permit to be gotten to have that sign. The top part of it is their name in English only. The bottom part is a constantly rotating neon sign. Every couple of days it's a new message, and it's in French only, and that's what's supposed to be bilingual. But they're in French only. So he had contacted Monsieur Goddard, whose daughter is the manager of that facility, and they said, well, we got funding because we're a Francophone group. So how can we put English on our sign? So this is how they're going to get around it, eh, guys? This is how they're going to get around it. They get funding from us, so they're allowed to have French-only signs. We don't get funding, so we're not allowed French-only signs. Or English-only signs, I should say. So that's how they're trying to get around that. But we do have politicians on our side more and more, which is so good to see. Pierre Leroux in Embrun, Russell Township, Tammy and Brian in South Stormont. And we went to South Glengarry recently, but I will let Howard tell you more of that. I'd like to introduce you, a great friend of mine, someone that's been fighting for freedom of speech for so long. Hopefully, they'll hear us. Howard Galgan.